A California woman, her name Mayra Karina Chavez, 33 years of age, has been found guilty in regards to the brutal torturing of her stepdaughter, 10 years of age, who thankfully has survived after being starved to the point that she weighed 50 pounds at the age of 10. She was finally taken to hospital by her father, his name Domingo Jr. Flores, 33 years of age. The 10-year-old girl, we don't know her name, was taken to the Children's Hospital of Orange County. She weighed 50 pounds. Further to that, she had extensive injuries. I'm going to read through some of those. I'll provide you with a trigger warning. The 10-year-old girl had a broken neck, a bone sticking out of an unhealed wound. Can you imagine that? A bone sticking out of an unhealed wound. In addition, she had bruises covering almost her entire body. 50 pounds, starved, malnourished, a broken neck, and a bone sticking out of an unhealed wound. So again, the father took the 10-year-old girl to the hospital. Of course, the staff were shocked and abhorred by the extensive injuries that the girl was suffering, the severe malnourishment that she was suffering. So obviously, the father was asked, what the F happened? Why is your daughter in this dreadful state? Of course, the father didn't accept any responsibility himself, nor did he blame the stepmother concerned. No, it was the child's fault, obviously. Oh, the child must have hurt themselves, and then they had a little accident, they fell down some stairs. Nothing to do with us, we're good parents. Obviously, the doctors, the hospital staff saw through such an awful facade. An investigation was launched. Officers went to the family home and apartment in Anaheim, Orange County, California, at which point they found various instruments of torture and terror that were used against this one 10-year-old child. In particular, there were other children in the home. The article's a little vague about the details of the other children, understandably so, but we are told that there were numerous zip ties all around the home. Why would they have zip ties? Well, again, they were used to torture and terrorize, humiliate the 10-year-old girl. She was hogtied. She was forced to kneel on tin cans. Her siblings were forced to attack her too. They were forced to zip tie the 10-year-old girl, their own sister. She was zip tied to her bed frame. The other children were told to ignore her cries. So there she is, 10 years of age, suffering months, if not years, but certainly months of torture and terror at the hands of her own father and her scumbag stepmother, physically, mentally, emotionally abused and humiliated. Alone, her siblings also attacking her against their will. They were forced to. They had no real choice but to comply for fear of facing the same punishment themselves. Again, we're not told the 10-year-old girl's name, but we're told that following being taken to the hospital, and I'm gonna say somewhat rescued by her torturous father. I don't wish to give him too much credit, but it does seem that by taking her to hospital, he did indeed save her life, or allow the hospital staff to save her life. She is alive. We're told that she's undergone 20 surgeries so far. She underwent 17 surgeries for her knees alone. She wasn't able to walk. It took more than 9 months for her to learn how to re-walk. 17 surgeries for her knees alone. We're told that there were several witnesses, I believe family members, that described how the 10-year-old was forced to kneel on raw rice as well as tin cans while she was zip tied. Why didn't those witnesses act at the time? If I was there, if I was a witness there, if it was a family member or whomever it happened to be, if I was there, if I witnessed this myself, there's no way that I would be leaving the room without ensuring the safety of that girl. There's no way that would happen. Either that girl would be saved or I would be killed. One or the other. There would just be no two ways about it. So it does seem that there were witnesses that were aware of the situation, and it's a good thing that they're coming forward at this stage. But where the fuck were they before? Why didn't they attempt to save this girl? Even if they weren't to have acted directly, they could have reported her. We're told that it was the father, the torturer himself, or one of the torturers, that brought the girl to hospital. Why didn't the witnesses intervene previously? That needs to be looked at. I would argue that the witnesses potentially ought to face some charges themselves. If they were aware that a human being, a child, was being abused, tortured on an ongoing basis, and they did fuck all about it, then how is that not aiding and abetting? They need to face investigation, if not charges. That's my knee-jerk reaction. You may or may not agree with me. We're also told about another act of torture against the 10-year-old girl. She was plunged face first into a bathtub full of ice water while she was zip-tied. Her head was shoved in a bathtub which had ice water in it. I'm not sure if that makes a big difference, ice water or no ice water. If you're zip-tied and you have your your head shoved into a bathtub full of water, that's torture. And that happened, allegedly, at the hands of her own father and stepmother. I'm going to read out another bit of torture. You might want to skip this one. This is unpleasant, but so are the other examples, of course. The 10-year-old girl was forced by the stepmother to bite into a habanero pepper, so I presume an extremely powerful, extremely hot, extremely spicy pepper. She was forced to bite into a habanero pepper, and then that pepper was rubbed into the 10-year-old girl's eyes and her genitals. These parents are fucking sick evil. It's an absolute blessing that this 10-year-old girl has survived. So again, she's undergone more than 20 surgeries, 17 for her knees alone. She was unable to walk for at least 9 months. Her knees basically destroyed, forced to kneel on raw rice and tin cans whilst hogtied, attempted drownings, starved, 50 pounds at the age of 10, bruises all over her body, a bone protruding from a wound, a broken neck. So we're told that 3 siblings of the 10-year-old girl were present at the trial of the scumbag stepmother again. Her name, Mayra Corina Chavez, 33 years of age. Thankfully, she has been found guilty. I'll read through the charges again. She's been found guilty of 1 felony count of torture, 2 felony counts of CA and child endangerment, 1 felony enhancement of causing great bodily injury, and 1 count of misdemeanor simple assault. A litany of charges against the stepmother, Mayra Corina Chavez, and she's been found guilty, thankfully. And again, 3 of the girl's siblings stood on the stand during the trial and recounted how the stepmother enlisted them in torturing their 10-year-old sister. The other children were forced to torture their own sister. They didn't want to. They didn't choose to do that. They were forced to. We're not given too many details, but it seems that the siblings were also, of course, undoubtedly victims of CA themselves. The details of that has not been provided. We're really told about the dreadful, awful, barbaric, horrific treatment of the 10-year-old girl, again, whose name has been withheld and who thankfully has survived. We're told that the scumbag stepmother faces a maximum sentence of 7 years to life in prison. In regards to the torture conviction, she faces up to 10 years in prison for the 2 CA convictions and 4 months in regards to the assault conviction. She's due to be sentenced early November. The father is awaiting trial, so he is facing charges of 1 felony count of torture, 2 felony counts of CA and endangerment, 1 misdemeanor count of felony CA, and 1 felony enhancement of causing great bodily injury. So very much the same. Perhaps there's some differences between the charges that the stepmother has faced. Thankfully, the stepmother has been found guilty. She's awaiting sentencing. California authorities, perhaps specifically Anaheim authorities, will be deciding how long should they imprison this absolute piece of shit scumbag CUNT Banshee. How long should she spend behind bars? Should it be 7 years or should it be life in prison? Yeah, let me give you a bit of advice, Anaheim. You do not want this sick scumbag on the streets. You have found her guilty of torturing her children, plural. We're told in detail about the horrific suffering of her 10-year-old stepdaughter, but we're also told that her other children also faced ongoing CA. But her 10-year-old daughter nearly died. It's a miracle that she survived. Again, we're not told of the extent of the recovery that the 10-year-old girl has made. She is now able to walk after 17 surgeries on her knees alone. More than 20 surgeries so far in total. 50 pounds at the age of 10 when she was taken into hospital by her father, who subjected her to this horrendous torture along with the stepmother. The father will be facing his own trial shortly. Let's hope he too is found guilty. I've gone on a bit of a tangent. I've lost my thought, but I've just remembered, where the fuck were the witnesses? Why the fuck didn't the witnesses do something beforehand? I'm not blaming the children. I'm not blaming the siblings. Perhaps I should. Perhaps some of the siblings, perhaps some of the children were of age, did have an ability to reach out to authorities, to their teachers, to other family members, to community members or such. Perhaps some of them could have been expected to have acted to some extent, but I don't know the full details there. So I'm going to err on the side of not blaming the children. They're victims themselves, some of them forced to torture their own sister. They would have seen her in the awful, wretched condition that she was in. 50 pounds, a broken neck, a bone protruding from an unhealed wound. And they're still forced to torture her, to hog tie the 10-year-old girl to a bed frame, to force her to kneel on raw rice and tin cans. Why? Oh, oh, she forgot to brush her teeth. That's what they do in this family household. They hog tie the children if they don't brush their teeth. Again, I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but where the fuck were the witnesses? Why didn't they do something sooner? They need to be scrutinized at the very, very least. Really, they need to be investigated. If they had an understanding, significant suspicions that a person, even if that person was not a child, if they had strong suspicions or knowledge that there was a person being tortured, being abused, then they were morally obliged to report such wrongdoings to authorities. And seemingly they didn't, if I understand correctly, and again, perhaps I don't. I go through one article, it gives us a certain amount of information, but it can't cover all of the details, of course. But my take on it is the witnesses have thankfully come forward at the point of the trial. Well, that's good, but where the fuck were you before? You knew about this, you did nothing about it, you left the 10-year-old girl continue to be tortured, you left her to continue to be starved, you left the other children there in this dreadful situation, fearful, tortured, psychologically, mentally, emotionally abused and humiliated by their scumbag father, by their scumbag stepmother. You allowed that to happen, you didn't step in. You motherfuckers. They need to face punishment, in my mind, based on the information that I seem to have from this one article. No one should be allowed to tolerate this, to turn a blind eye, to enable these horrific things. Again, regardless as to whether or not the victim is a child. This child, this 10-year-old, had her head shoved in a bathtub full of ice water. What is that? It's not waterboarding, is it? I mean, it's an attempted drowning. There she is, suffering torture at the hands of her father and her stepmother, time and time again, forced to eat a habanero pepper, extremely hot, extremely spicy, forced to eat that. You're not supposed to be eating those raw. She was forced to eat that, but then the pepper was rubbed into her eyes and then rubbed into her genitals. These parents absolutely need to be locked away for life. Anaheim authorities, Orange County authorities, California authorities. If you've got the option of banging this scumbag stepmother away for 7 years, if you take that fucking option, you are desecrating the victims concerned. Again, thankfully, the 10-year-old girl miraculously has survived. But that should not grant anyone a pass. It's a miracle that she survived. I hope that further miracles have happened and she's able to make a full recovery, not only physically, but emotionally, psychologically, mentally. There is a GoFundMe being managed by, I believe, the Anaheim Family Justice Center, which I applaud. Actually, maybe not a GoFundMe, but it is a donation fund. I think that's good because these victims do need to be protected. GoFundMes are public. I believe I'm right in saying, perhaps I'm wrong, but the causes are very explicit. It mentions the full details, the names of the victims concerned, the recipients of the donations. I think there are good reasons for that transparency, but it means that some victims aren't able to have a GoFundMe, which could potentially raise substantial donations for their well-being, for their financial well-being, to cover their medical costs. I mean, this 10-year-old girl, she now is an orphan, I presume. In effect, her father will be facing trial shortly. Hopefully he'll be banged away for life. The mother, the stepmother rather, has been found guilty of a litany of charges. Hopefully she gets banged away for life. So that leaves the 10-year-old parentless. Presumably she'll be entering in the child protection system. We're not provided any details in that regards. But there's a need for her to be a recipient of financial donations to cover her current costs and her future costs. She perhaps may not be in a mental state to enter the workforce for quite some time. I would think that would be pretty reasonable to expect. So anyway, I've gone on a bit of a ramble there, but I do support the fact that these organizations, in this case the Anaheim Family Justice Center, is able to manage a donation fund. Hopefully whatever funds are received do get to go to the victims concerned. I don't have full faith in authorities, by the way, but I guess that's everything that I want to go through at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. If you're in a position to consider joining my memberships, please do. Perhaps you're able to drop a super thanks. If you're not, that's perfectly fine. I'll thank you for your time. Feel free to give me any feedback. I want this channel to grow. I want this channel to be successful. It is difficult for me to find the time and energy to go through these topics. I go through periods where I'm able to manage a lot, then I'm not. I've chopped and changed my style several times. Sometimes I get a lot of views, a lot of subs, sometimes I don't. So I'm still trying to figure things out. Perhaps I don't quite have the same energy as I once did. I'm not really considering live streams at this point. I see the benefit of doing that. I would like some kind of community kind of communication, but at the same time, it takes a lot of time and energy, and I don't really have that time and energy, so can't really think about it too much. But I am interested in your general feedback. If anyone's listening to this point, you're an absolute star, and I'll wrap things up at this point. Thank you.